Hi guys, how you doing? I'm sitting here trying to remember when was last time I sent you a video. Was it last week? Because didn't I say I'm gonna do this every 2 weeks, so twice a month? Um, I don't remember. So don't be surprised if you're gonna get it more frequently or less frequently. Anyhow, I wanted to do this video today. Sorry, I'm trying to pick decks. I should have brought some more unusual decks to illustrate the point I'm going to try to make. But I thought about this video when we had our Zoom, which was so much fun. I thought about this video because one of you towards the end talked about how you have a lot of different tarot decks. I have two right here that are very familiar to both of you, all of you. And you talked about how you have different tarot decks and how each one is kind of like a buddy, like a friend. And I think about this a lot because I have a lot of tarot decks too. And how, yeah, each one serves like a different purpose, right? Like there's the deck for healing, then there's the deck for inner child work, there's the deck for shadow work. People have decks for career. I use Muse Tarot by Chris Ann. Is it Chris Ann? Because it's such a great deck for career. So there's like decks for different teams, right? And we tend to use them, which is fine. But another thing that I think about a lot, and this is actually the material I'm talking about is extrapolated out of the class that I created recently, the foundational application of foundational approach to tarot. Where the interesting thing about the variation of decks is that today more and more decks are starting to depart from traditional, right? By traditional, I know this is debatable. By traditional, I'm talking about Tarot de Marseille, Rider-Waite-Smith, or Thoth. And so we have these traditional meanings, tarot meanings, right? Which tend to be very applicable to those decks. But then we have a lot of tarot decks, like Mary L is a great example, where it's very hard to really apply traditional meanings because the symbolism tends to depart quite by far, mythologically, very far away from traditional. And then we have some other decks that are even further away from traditional, that are the creators using completely different symbology, completely different images, completely different things to illustrate the point, which is not bad, which is totally fine and within the right to do. But this is what I think about. I think about how sometimes when we say all of those decks can be our best friends, what I want to challenge all of you to think about is, yes, they can be, but here's the thing. And think about these best friends as instruments, right? Different musical instruments. So you have a violin, and you have a cello, and you have a piano, and maybe one of the decks is analogous to guitar. And so while you think you're actually playing each instrument, because you're thinking, well, I know how to play tarot, right? The main instrument, so I can apply it to each instrument. I know traditional meanings. But what if, in fact, while you think you're playing them, they are playing you? In other words, what if all of these bodies, while you perceive them as being friends, they're actually playing on your psyche? Let me explain a little bit further. This is actually a really fascinating thing to think about, because what is artwork? When independent creators create artwork and create images, what is artwork? I call this, the word that I like to use is Mary L's, or, well, her name is not Mary L, her name is Marie White. I call this Marie's illustration of her inner subjective library. Meaning, we all have inner subjective library inside of us. I have one, you have one, she has one. And that library inside of us is composed of how we tend to think about images. What are our associations to different images? Because remember, my association to a lion will be different than your association to a lion. My association to an orchid will be different than your association to an orchid, and so on and so forth, right? And it's going to be different across the board for all of us because we have our own subjective relationship to variety of images. And that relationship is shaped up and based on very, very many factors, including it's going to be shaped up by, oh my God, right now I'm thinking about the Oscars are going on tonight. And I don't even watch Oscars. That's the thought that's popping in my mind, like a mind fart. But it's your internal subjective library is shaped up by, for example, how you grew up, where you grew up, what was your life experiences like, If you had any experience with lines, that's going to shape up your perception of the image of what lines mean to you. And as you go through life and you have different experiences with these images, your internal subjective library is also changing and growing and evolving, right? So this is very, very fascinating, because the reason being, when we read tarot, that is so far departs from traditional meaning, right? And when we're looking at these cards, so for example, let me find a good example in Mary Ells to illustrate the point. I wonder even if I will be able to find you guys a really good. I don't want to use this example. This is example I use in my class that I created, so I don't want to use that one. In case I don't know, if some of you will take the class, you want to be surprised by the example. But the point I'm trying to make is that the meanings tend to depart far and wide. So, for example, Ace of Wands, right? So it's not that easy to apply traditional meaning to Ace of Wands. So when we look at something that is very non-traditional, we tend to either force traditional meaning onto it, right? By trying to force playing this instrument. So let's say this is a violin, and you're trying to force playing this violin the way you've been taught to play all of the instruments, right? Versus really paying attention to what's happening here. Because here's the thing, this is how this card may potentially playing you in your tarot readings. You're entering Marie's inner subjective library. So you're entering her inner subjective worldview of what Ace of Wands is to her. Apart from a booklet where she shares what it is, it's still not depthful enough, at least with a lot of creators. She obviously does a great job giving us a really good guidebook, but for a lot of creators, they don't. And a lot of times you don't know why the hell they use, a particular animal to illustrate a particular point, or why they suddenly decided to depict Queen of Coins sitting on a horse. I don't know. That's the thing, though. They're using their own relationship to that symbolism, and then they draw it. So in a way, what they're saying is that this is how I see this, right? So when we're reading these cards, we don't know exactly what their intersubjective library is. We presume by just picking up off of the images, but then we free associate and we layer that further with our intersubjective library. So it becomes one layered on top of another. And that can really model up the readings. Because you're making a lot of assumptions. You're looking at this card and you're assuming, okay, so looks like potentially could be a line because there's a lion head, right? Why is the lion Ace of Wands? Why did she pick a line? Lines for me mean ABC. I'm gonna apply that. In the meantime, you're missing a whole bunch of things, and this card may be completely psychologically playing and messing up with you, because that's not even what is intended to be in here. This is a very tricky part about reading the cards that are created by another creator. This is a very tricky card because, sometimes you just struggle, and sometimes you just don't even know how to kind of put yourself in readings. So, for example, here she's using what is it, like a young deer. My animal knowledge is non-existent, as a Daughter of Pentacles with a rainbow above it. So go figure, what is that supposed to mean? And so suddenly I'm entering her, Kim Krantz, inner subjective library of that meaning, and suddenly I'm layering it with my own subjectivity. And without really fully knowing what she meant, it's very hard, because this image also playing with us. The way these images end up playing with us psychologically during the reading is because psyche communicates through images. The language of the psyche is imagery. So while you're looking at the image and you consciously may be trying to sort it out and cognitively and analytically make sense of it, internally something is happening in the unconscious. Your unconsciousness is also reading the image, using the image as a language. So it's already getting some kind of energetic reaction out of an image that you're not fully aware yet. And it's doing an internal work you're not aware of. And the way it's going to do internal work is whatever it is associations to it, not necessarily what this is meant to mean. So you're missing out a lot on what exactly this is supposed to mean, because you don't really have a very detailed description of a card. A lot of the cases you don't. Again, Marie is a good example because she's a bad example because she has quite a bit in her guidebook, but I have a lot of decks where there isn't a guidebook. I have a lot of decks where they don't tell you why is the particular depiction of images. I know you do too. And it can be really frustrating because you're looking at something and you're thinking, why is this presented here? How is that supposed to be applicable? And then you start constructing your own associations, but you're missing that big chunk. So it's really the way to shortcut that, and the way I find myself shortcutting that and learning how to be better at it is what I do is I root myself in the foundation of the image. And what I do is I root myself in first the objective essence of the image, and only then. So let me say more. When you root yourself in the objective essence of an image, what you're doing is you're doing twofold. One, you're keeping the image more pure to its essence without really laying it any weight on what the creators meant, because you may not even know what creators meant by the image. So you're just really stripping it to the essence. And two, by keeping it pure, you enable then, once you know its objective essence, you allow yourself then to use your subjectivity now to dress it up. Imagine that your objectivity is going to be like a foundation of the house, right? So it's just like a bare bones, it's a bare structure. Then your subjectivity, your intuition, your feelings about it, your free associations about it, your projections about it, all going to be how now you're going to dress up that house, what kind of curtains you're going to put up, what the furniture inside is going to look. Now you're making the image your own, but only after you get to the essence, to the objective essence of the image. And that's how I find myself, really not to like market myself. This is for the foundation class that I did about. I go more in detail how to do that, but I'm sharing here with you guys a little bit about it because it's important. This is how you tend to find a little segue. You tend to find a way to avoid having the cards play on your psyche. And this is how you also avoid reinforcing traditional meanings under the images that are not meant for traditional meanings, by rooting it in the objective essence of an image. And this again opens up doorway to a fascinating discussion. What is objectivity? Is there such thing as an absolute objectivity? And I say yes, everything has an objective freaking essence to it. I'm sorry. I mean, if a glass primary function is to be able to hold liquids, that's its subjective essence. It is meant to be able to hold, it's a container to be able to hold liquids or to be able to hold some kind of substance. You can have all kind of associations to or symbolic projections onto the glass that it's it's a vessel for your emotions, and it's I don't know, so many other things people may have. But in the end of the day, it's still a glass, and we can all agree that the objective function and essence of this is to be able to hold substance, preferably to hold liquids. So that's going to be the foundation of it, right? Then how you dress it up is going to be your own. So yeah, I think there's definitely an objectivity to function and form and essence that exists within the images. And I think it's really important not to stray too far away from it. This is just my opinion. I'd love to hear your guys' opinion. How do you guys read decks that are so fundamentally depart from any kind of traditional symbolism, traditional meanings? Again, you don't have to agree, obviously, with my opinion. This is just something to ponder. This is maybe just another way to look at the readings, right? There's so many different freaking ways. But I want to know, how do you, when you get a deck that is so far away from tradition, and you also don't really have a very good detailed guidebook that explains to you what was the point of picking a particular image, how do you read those decks? Do you just solely, I'm assuming your answer is going to be, I solely rely on either I solely rely on my intuition, or you're going to say that I first apply traditional meaning to the card, because after all it is still a tarot. It doesn't change the fact that it's still a tarot. It doesn't change the fact that if I'm looking at Seven of Wands, it's still going to be Seven of Wands. It doesn't matter how it's going to be illustrated. So maybe your foundation is then the traditional meaning, whether it fits or not in terms of image, and then you layer it. So let me know. I'd be curious to know. if you're gonna watch Oscars tonight, I live in LA. Everybody, I think, watching Oscars. I'm not gonna watch Oscars. I never watch Oscars. Enjoy it. I don't even know what films they have up for it. Yeah, and other than that, I'll see you guys next time.